Hello everyone and welcome back to the FinTech Times. We're here today at the MoneyLIVE Summit in London and today I'm joined by Jeremy. Jeremy, how are you?
I'm very, very well, thank you very much. It's great to be here and great to have a chat about such a constantly dynamic topic.
Well, it is, and especially in the face of the post-pandemic era, it couldn't be more topical. So it's a lot of good conversations going on today, including this one. I think today we should start, Jeremy, by letting our viewers know exactly about who you are and where you've come from.
Fantastic. So my name's Jeremy Larsson. I'm Associate Director and Lead Lecturer in FinTech at the London Institute of Banking and Finance, formerly the Chartered Institute of Banking. And prior to that, I've got a varied and hopefully quite successful career in FinTech, banking and consulting. So prior to my current role, I was UK and EMEA General Manager for Currency Fair, the world's third largest peer-to-peer currency exchange platform. Prior to that, I set up Telegraph Financial Services, the world's first media company to be FCA regulated. And then I've worked for banks as well. So I was Group Head of Innovation for the SME and Commercial Bank for RBS Group, before it was called NatWest. And I've worked in strategy consulting and Barclays and other places like that as well. But now the reason I'm here is because I'm speaking tomorrow in terms of how the cloud is shaping FinTech and what people can expect in terms of how FinTech is constantly going to evolve and how cloud is going to facilitate that. So I'm going to be talking about embedded finance, dynamic personalization, all driven by the cloud.
Wow, it sounds like you've got quite a day ahead.
That's tomorrow.
That's tomorrow. We're getting a sneak peek today, which we're very happy about. So, well, let's just dive straight into it. So you mentioned in our intro that the space is constantly changing, right? Even it's different from the beginning of this interview. It's already changed.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So.
Well, we can talk about last Friday, right? Because that really is pretty much in the course of this interview. So.
Well, yeah.
One of the biggest events in terms of, the role of big tech, Google, Amazon, Apple, is that Apple made that huge move into the whole embedded finance fintech space by buying Credit Kudos for £150 million, literally just last Friday. And I think what's fascinating about that is not only is that Apple's biggest investment in fintech, but it also kind of presages where Apple is likely to go in the fintech space to provide, if you like, credit bureau as a service over the cloud with Credit Kudos' capability. So it's a massive move of big tech to go into that space and rivals some of the moves that Amazon have made and Google in terms of their ambitions in fintech and being not just a supplier to the fintech industry, but actually rivaling head on with some of the fintechs and incumbents already in that space. So sorry, apologies for that. I didn't even let you finish.
No, I think it was a great way to open. I mean, let's just confirm that 150 million is pocket change to Apple, right?
Well, yes, of course.
And,
yes.
and to us, of course, as well.
I wish, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really interesting when we think about Paytech.
Yeah.
And we think about making the modern transaction. It is naturally very linked in with FinTech.
Absolutely.
But where do you see Paytech working outside of the FinTech scale? I mean, you just mentioned a bit about Facebook and Apple there. Well, have you got any more thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we talk about Paytech as if this is a radical new concept, but frankly, when the credit card was developed in the early 60s, that was Paytech in its age. So, what we have now with what we call Paytech is actually making the process of making a transaction, which was greatly facilitated with a credit card back in the 60s, now an almost seamless experience for both consumers and businesses, whether it's integrated into a electronic point of sale in the real world or whether it's integrated into a online checkout from Shopify. It's about making it completely frictionless. But to answer your specific question as to where it's going, well, I think one of the really interesting things about payments is that as yet, there's still no provider that literally integrates all the different payment modes together to make it as seamless or as frictionless as it could possibly be. There's not one proposition out there that integrates both credit and debit cards open banking, crypto, and rewards, right? And you know, everybody talks about there's so much innovation there. There is. But what I find interesting is that there's so much more innovation to go. And this is a small plug. So with my other hat, I'm a SME payments entrepreneur. And my proposition is called Navy Pay. And we believe we are the first payments company to actually literally integrate all those different payment modes together. So apologies for that tiny little plug. But it's a genuine problem, which nobody else is looking at the moment yet.
And here you are. And
here we are.
And you heard it here
for
first.
Sneak preview first.
They heard it here first,
yes,
exactly.
Indeed.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you mention that you're setting up that business model, because you're obviously looking to answer a very specific question that's happening now in fintech and in Paytech specifically. But if we look at the solutions and how they work in a practical sense, we see that they adhere to the changing customer demands, and the customer demands are different to what they were even a year ago, 6 months ago.
And there's an interesting choice of language here, which I'm not trying to be pedantic about the language, but there's a great difference between demands and wants and needs. And the reason I make that distinction is because the last person you interviewed, the CEO of Mode, what's really interesting is I think that without critiquing that business model, what I think is really, really interesting about that is that it is, I think, quite an interesting kind of mashup of the crypto and payments in a way that I don't think is really driving ahead crypto payments innovation. It feels like it is in response to high consumer interest, high topicality around crypto, right? So who wouldn't want to have rewards in Bitcoin or something like that? It's a great sort of tweak, but I don't think it's actually meeting a customer need. It's actually meeting a sort of what I would call a relatively transient demand. Whereas what I think I'm doing at Navy Pay, and I think there will be other propositions, is that I think people will want to have control over what payment mode they're using. And so why wouldn't you have a payment application that enabled card payments, open banking, rewards potentially, and crypto? So, you know, it's interesting, you know, to have a successful business, you have to have a business that people are pulling, you know, that they feel a high demand for, that they feel it's sexy. I think Mode might be doing that. But I also want to develop a business which has a real tangible need. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Contentious opinions here.
I don't want to come between you and Rita.
No.
So
I'm sure we wouldn't.
No.
Best of frenemies.
Best of frenemies. Well, Jeremy, with so much being said in our conversation so far, I think my final question for you, very simple, I'm going to put it to you, and you'll see how it goes. But my question to you, for the final part of this interview, is what does the new normal in Paytech look like? Paint me a picture.
Well, look, I think there are three major trends. So one is that interconnectedness between different payment modes, and nobody as yet has successfully popularized or commercialized that model of integrating crypto with card, with rewards, with open banking. So I think there's still that ability to connect all the different payment modes to make it truly frictionless and giving the control back to the customer in terms of how they want to pay for stuff. I think that's one trend. I think the second trend that you're seeing is around embedded finance. So, you know, the role of big tech, of Apple buying Credit Kudos, of Amazon having bought 35 different fintechs since 2019, essentially at this point in time, mainly to power their supply chain, to help have their suppliers from China pay and get redeemed for all of their purchases much more quickly. But you're going to see Amazon, Google, Apple itself, of course. You're going to see more and more forays from big tech into the world of financial services. So kind of watch that space. And that's very much at the sort of beachhead of embedded finance. You're going to see much more around embedded finance. And then the third thing, and again, this isn't new news, but it's going to be very interesting to see how, and if you hear from my conversation on Talk tomorrow about the cloud, I'm going to talk a little bit about how the cloud and blockchain and Web3 might see a revolution in payments as well. I mean, we talk a lot about the metaverse these days. It's very, very topical. I mean, maybe I'm just showing my age and the grey hair, but you know, back in 2007, there was this model called Second Life, which is almost identical to the metaverse today. Second Life died after 3 years. I'm curious to see whether the metaverse is here to stay, or again, whether it's a bit of a fad and just a transient phase. If it's not a fad, and if it's here to stay, again, you're going to see a wave of innovation in terms of blockchain payments and metaverse payments as well. So those are my top 3 tips for the future.
Well, you've left us on a good note, and we have to say, wish you best of luck for your speech tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
And it's been a pleasure to speak with you,
It has been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
I hope I'll be invited back again.
Oh yes, maybe not right after Rita, but if she doesn't get to you first. Anyway,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank
Take
you.
care.